Now it's been well documented that City are in need of a rebuild, and which began in January with four new arrivals, three of those aged 23 and younger. They're obviously expected to target younger players to address that aging squad in the summer. And while a lot of those first team stars are expected to stay, the likes of Foden and Savinho, Gvardiol, Doku, players like that, and others are facing an uncertain future. The likes of Kevin De Bruyne, who's out of contract in the summer,
Yeah,
John Stones, who's frustratingly injured once again. You've got Ilkay Gundogan, Jack Grealish, Ederson. Their futures have been linked with moves away, and Walker, of course, is currently on
yeah.
loan, and expected to leave. So Guardiola's recently hinted that a summer overhaul could happen. And do you think in recent weeks, Stephen, that it's become clearer as to which of those senior players are set to move on, which are set to seek pastures new in the summer?
The most telling thing for me was Guardiola in the press conference prior to the Liverpool game when he said, "I'll try and find the exact quote, but he was sort of saying that." I'll paraphrase it, but he said we'll sit down with agents and physios and the players, and he talked about players need to be available for 2 or 3 games. It's a game every 2 or 3 days these days, and they're not available. It's not going to work. So essentially, he's turned around and said, anyone who's old and can't run and can't play twice a week, the way football's going right now, it's just not enough, and that is going to be very hard to take for some of these, for some of us as fans of some of these players, because ultimately there's some legends in the crosshairs there, and like you think about people like the defense centre backs like John Stones and Ake, are they vulnerable? Because they're barely fit. And John Stones in particular, he's played about a third or a quarter of the games he could have done in his time at Man City because of injuries. Then you think about Kevin De Bruyne, where he's just struggling right now. It's hard to watch. Gundogan does not have the legs anymore. Is there a potential for Bernardo Silva to be at risk? I don't think so. I think he might just end up staying for one more year. But he's shown a drop off in terms of keeping up with it, the intensity of the game. So yeah, I think we're starting to see signs of, by the words of Guardiola and very public, statements of intent to rebuild this squad that, we could lose some big legends. Kyle Walker's certain. I feel Ederson. I feel he still wants to go. Like he didn't really make it. He didn't really hide the fact that he was tempted by the Saudi money last year, and I get that. I get it. At his age, it's a big wage increase. He's not going over there to play Saudi League football. Let's be honest, because I don't think anyone still truly is like idolizing that over the paycheck. And I'm sorry if that offends him. I think it's just true. So I get why he'd want to go over there still, and I think that if the offer's still there, he'd go for it. And I think ultimately, I think his head's a bit turned a bit because he's been here for so long. Ederson's a good chance. I think there'll be one big centre back that leaves, be it Stones or Ake. I think Guardiola would prefer it to be John Stones personally, given the left foot of Nathan Ake. But I don't know how possible that is with a year left on his contract and big wages. Like I don't know who would take him there, and if he even wants to go. That's the issue, obviously, with some of these players. There's some rumours this morning that De Bruyne would like to stay, even as a bit part player, which is interesting because I feel like the time is telling us that his time is up, unfortunately. So De Bruyne, I think he might be up. Gundogan, I'm almost certain it will be. I don't really feel that, and I think there might be a surprise or two where, you know, so it's a sort of a side of like the quality of like a Fenerbahce or someone that puts in a 20 million bid for Kovacic, and he considers moving on because we've seen that, and the rumours we've had rumours about that before. That's the kind of transfer I expect could happen. Mateus Nunes back to Sporting or something. So I think there's a few players definitely at risk, and it's definitely the older ones. I think that's probably natural. Jack Grealish is another because Jack Grealish is apparently more in and out right now, and I struggle to you know see who would go to. I don't know who would pay the wages and so on, but I think there might be a couple of things where the players go out on loan or whatever, or I don't know. I think it's going to be tough, but I think City are going to have to be a little bit brutal.
Yeah, and that quote you alluded to from Guardiola, I've just got it up here now. He said we had to sit down with the doctors, the players, agents, and be clear that some of them cannot sustain playing every 3 days. This is the reality. A lot of players cannot sustain what we've done in the past every week in, week out, playing in different competitions, the traveling, and he goes on, says a bit more about that. So it's sort of suggesting in a way that an overhaul is probably ex on the cards. Some of those players cannot continue. If City are going to compete on in, three or four competitions every season,
Yeah.
they just can't. All of these players cannot keep going and sustain that over several years.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and that's the thing is like the football's changed, and the football is also it's a reaction to Guardiola. Guardiola's, I really truly believe he's created this beast like that. The introduction of possession football and City controlling games, If someone's going to pass it better, all you can do is run better and faster and stronger. And this is where we're at right now. Guardiola also said in that press conference, oh, no, it might be with the Neil Warnock interview actually, where he
Mm.
said like the teams in mid-table are better than ever, and I believe that. I think there's not a single team in the Premier League that doesn't have a player that could play in the Champions League. You know, not necessarily for Real Madrid or Bayern Munich or whatever or City, but I'm talking about for the your likes of I don't know, Club Brugge or Sevilla or whatever, or at Dortmund. Like, there's players that would play in Champions League football, at every single team in the Premier League, and I truly believe that. You're telling me Liam Delap wouldn't score goals for someone, in the Champions League, and he's at Ipswich. You got Dibbling, it looks like a cracking prospect who I can imagine being a breakout star in the Bundesliga, and he's at a team immensely struggling. And I think Guardiola's telling the truth. And I think these teams are physical, they're aggressive, and not those two teams in particular. But I think his point holds true that the level has got higher and higher. And as a result of that, look, City were always the smartest team on the pitch, always were. But they could also run because they were young and hungry. They can't run anymore. And I don't even think they're always the smartest team on the pitch anymore because technically it's dropped off a little bit in terms of quality, be it fitness, be it age, and so on. So we have to pull back that gap in terms of get the technical level where it used to be, but also just be able to run. That's the bare minimum these days in football because it's just so intense and so organised. And you've got coaches like Areola, or even Kieran McKenna, who makes a very limited Ipswich side so structurally strong and is intense. So every game is a battle. Look at the Brentford are brilliant. Here's my hot take. That put that Brentford team now into Premier League 20 years ago. They're getting Champions League football, and they are because they're so structured and organised, and I truly believe that. So you live and die by the sword, essentially. You know, Guardiola's brilliance sort of forced the antidote into existence, and now we have to adapt to that as well because it's hit us. So yeah.
You mentioned some of those players there, about five, six, seven players that potentially could leave City. How many of those actually could leave? Could, a massive chunk of those leave? Could you actually see like seven or eight players leaving, or is it just going to be a select few and then City replace those, directly in
Well,
the summer?
yeah, no, I think it could be. They're like the first team one. Do you think Ederson? I think there's a very strong chance Ederson goes. Kyle Walker's 100% going. I would guess one of the centre backs goes because they're constantly unfit. So I don't know who that centre back is, but there's already three people. I would be amazed if City stood in the way of Mateus Nunes leaving if someone offered some money for him. So that's a maybe. But yeah, 3.5 already there. Then you go, one of the midfielders leave. Gundogan almost certain. So you're at 4.5. De Bruyne, I think there's a very strong chance. 5. Would I be surprised if once again, James McAtee went? Nope. And he's been part of the first team squad this season. You're at 6 players there all of a sudden. And then, we haven't touched on people like Kovacic, potentially, who else is the well, I mean, yeah, then there's people like Nico O'Reilly have got people interested in them. I don't think we'll see 8 people go, 9 people, but I'd be amazed if there isn't 5 or 6 or 4 or 5 at least minimum because it depends what the market's going to be like. We don't know how much money people are going to have or how much people are going to be hungry for some of these players. But I do think it's going to be a pretty aggressive, shift towards a younger squad, and City have already shown signs of that, and I think it'll have to carry on. And I actually really think it'll give Guardiola a little bit of life anyway. I think he needs these new players. Yeah, and I think he's enjoying seeing the signs of these young players be excellent. I mean, as a City fan, I couldn't help but be excited by Cousineau's performance yesterday against Liverpool. Like, I saw a 20-year-old there. He was like, "Oh my God, we've unearthed a potential star there." That is fun to watch as a player. I can only imagine as a coach, it's exciting too. So I think it'll happen because it's necessary for Guardiola and for City to move forward. And it might be painful, but sometimes you just got to go for it.